With the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, Aspyr has bundled the original Battlefront games into a single package for new fans and old fans like myself to enjoy. But what exactly has changed in this new collection versus the original games? So in this video, guys, we're going to be taking a look at the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection to see what exactly has changed in this new collection versus the original releases. Because if you're like me, you own the original games on Xbox and on Steam, and you're curious about, what exactly is in this new collection to see if it's worth your money. We're going to be covering all of that in today's video, so I hope you guys enjoy this video as much as I've enjoyed making it for you guys. And if you like the video, be sure to drop a like on it. It helps the video reach new fans, and as I always say, that's a great thing. And if you haven't done it yet, be sure to subscribe to Live from My Basement, where I make new videos like the one you're watching right now every single week. And if you feel like supporting the channel even further, maybe check out my membership. There's cool perks and things over there, and I greatly appreciate it. But guys, let's dive into the video. One of my biggest questions about the Battlefront Classic Collection was actually how the launcher was going to work. Were we going to have two separate downloads, one for each Battlefront game, or would they be combined? And I'm happy to say that the game only has one launcher. When you launch the game, you get to choose which game do you want to play, which is fantastic because no longer do you have to choose which game do you want to have installed, as they're now in one package. And speaking of menus, I'm happy to say that the menus are far more streamlined than that of the original Star Wars Battlefront 2 on Steam, as that game's menu is pretty awful, and instead are more in line with the Star Wars Battlefront 2 that we saw on the Xbox and PlayStation 2, which I think is a fantastic decision. But I gotta say, because nobody's talking about this, but in the original Battlefront, when you're actually loading into the map and you have that classic beeping sound, in the Classic Collection, the beeping is actually in the wrong pitch, which, I love that it's there, it's classic for a reason, but if you're gonna do it, at least get it right. Now, moving on to some actual visual enhancements, in this clip of the original Battlefront 2, I want you to focus on the textures of the hangar floor, so that right now when I switch it to the Classic Collection, you can actually see the visual improvements. You can see that there's actually reflections on this floor, and it looks a lot better. And I gotta say, a lot of the textures, especially the metal textures in the Battlefront Collection, look a lot better here. As you can see in this Confederacy tank, it looks really great. And then I switched it over to the original Battlefront 2, and the textures look a lot darker and a lot more flat. But in my opinion, one of the best visual enhancements seen in the Battlefront Collection is actually that done to the images in the deep background. In the original Battlefront, they looked pretty rough. And though they don't look really fantastic today, that is definitely an improvement over what is, in my opinion, the worst visual part of the original Battlefront games. And if we're going to be comparing things in the deep background, we got to compare the new skyboxes. As you can see in this clip of the original Battlefront 2, I want you to focus on the clouds as I change it now to the Classic Collection. It looks so much better now than it did in the original games. Though I got to say, not every mission you notice a huge difference here, but on the missions where you do notice the difference, it's actually pretty impressive. And though the new textures do look nice, I gotta say one area that I wish they improved on a bit more is actually improving the explosive effects between the original games and this new Classic Collection. As you can see in the original game, the explosions look pretty cool with the swirling smoke effects, but I feel like this is an area they could have really upped the ante and really impressed people with the new visuals by giving us new explosive effects that could really blow us away. Because in these Battlefront games, there's explosions everywhere, so it's something that, everyone would really notice and I think would be really appreciated. But moving on to one small detail I did notice, if you've seen any of my previous Battlefront Classic videos, one thing I really appreciate is that in the original Battlefront, when you enter a cockpit in first person, you can actually see the interior of the cockpit, and of course that returns in the Battlefront Classic Collection. But one thing they added is a bunch of little scuffs and dirt on the glass of the windows. At least it looks a lot more clear here than it did in the original Battlefront game, and I think it's cool. I like seeing those kinds of details. Another neat little detail I noticed is that in the original Battlefront 2, whenever you're attacking somebody with a lightsaber, whenever your lightsaber makes contact, there's a little flash with some sparks. But in the Classic Collection, whenever you do this exact same thing, the flash is a lot brighter in the Classic Collection than it was in the original game. And though it's not really a huge visual improvement, it does sell the kinetic impact of your lightsaber a lot more than it did in the original game, and I think that's pretty cool. Moving on to another improvement that's worth mentioning, especially if you only played the original Battlefront games on the original Xbox and PS2. As you can see from this clip, whenever you're looking at the Battle of Kashyyyk, you can't really see what's going on the other beach unless you zoom in, because the render distance of that game is so much shorter than what we see in the Classic Collection here, whereas I can see the battle going on the other side of the beach without having to actually zoom in, which is a noticeable improvement if you only played the original versions on console. Another thing I noticed when comparing these games is that Aspyr updated some of the sound effects, like this Hoth dish turret from the original game has the same sound effect as it does in the Classic Collection, but they actually split it up into two separate sounds, and there's actually a delay between the two. Other sound additions that I actually thought were pretty cool were like when you're in this hangar, you can actually hear a sound effect that goes off every time a ship flies through the hangar and actually enters space. It's pretty neat, and that wasn't in the original Battlefront 2. And finally, one of my favorite additions to the Battlefront Classic Collection, especially if you were only a console player of the original Battlefront games, is the addition of things like XL mode, which were only available in the Steam version of the game. There's also additional menu options that weren't available to the original console players that allow you to up the AI count to 64 AI versus the original 32. So even if you're not playing XL mode, you can play Conquest with additional AI that you couldn't do in the original Battlefront games on Xbox and PlayStation 2. Which in the end adds a lot of needed scale that these classic games definitely needed, especially on those original consoles. Well guys, this has been my breakdown of the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, and if you're anything like me, you went into this game with a lot of unanswered questions, you know, like, how does this game even launch? Does it have a separate downloaded launcher for each game, you know, vice versa? And I hope I answered some of your questions in this video, and hopefully decided whether or not it's worth, you know, upgrading. You know, for me personally, as someone who has played the classic versions of these games on Steam and on Xbox for years, I personally, one of my favorite additions in this game is just dedicated controller support. You know, so if you're anything like me and you play this game on Steam Deck, you could finally accurately hit the enemies that you're shooting at, you know, unless you're like just really good at doing it without aim assist. This helped me quite a bit. But guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to drop a like on it. As I always say, it means a lot to me. But guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.